Donald Trump woke up thinking it was just another Tuesday. By noon, his legal team was in full panic mode. By evening, evidence that nobody saw coming had already leaked to 3 major news outlets. Right now, as you're watching this, prosecutors are scrambling to contain information so explosive it could rewrite everything we thought we knew about January 6th. And here's the thing nobody's talking about. This isn't coming from the usual suspects. This isn't the New York Times with anonymous sources. This is documented evidence, time-stamped communications, and testimony from people inside Trump's own inner circle. What happened overnight is the story everyone is afraid to tell. Because this isn't about politics. This isn't about whether you love Trump or hate him. This is about evidence so damning that even his most loyal defenders are going quiet. And when you see what just surfaced, you'll understand why his entire legal strategy just collapsed. So what exactly dropped that sent the Trump camp into damage control? One piece of evidence, one communication thread, one moment that changes everything. Text messages. Not just any text messages. Communications between Trump's top advisors discussing what they knew and when they knew it. Messages sent in real time as events unfolded. Messages that directly contradict months of sworn testimony. But here's the thing. This wasn't a leak from prosecutors. This wasn't Democrats playing politics. This was a court filing, routine discovery, something that should have been buried in thousands of pages of legal documents. Except someone noticed. A paralegal, working late, scanning through exhibits, saw something that made them stop. They called their supervisor. The supervisor called the lead attorney. And by morning, the entire legal world was reading messages that Trump's team spent 2 years trying to keep hidden. See, most people think the January 6th case is about what Trump said at the rally. It's not. It started there, sure. But what prosecutors have been building, what they've spent years documenting, is something far more specific. They're not trying to prove Trump caused a riot. They're trying to prove he knew exactly what was going to happen and did nothing to stop it, that he had advanced knowledge of plans for violence and chose to let it proceed. That's not protected speech. That's criminal conspiracy. And these messages, if they're what prosecutors claim, prove exactly that. The moment everyone's talking about the evidence that could end Trump's political career, it's coming. But first, you need to see what led to this. Because when you understand the timeline, when you see how many people tried to warn Trump that day, the new evidence won't just make sense. It will seem inevitable. Here's what actually happened. The moment the story broke, 2:47 a.m. Eastern Time, a political reporter for a major network gets a tip. Check the latest court filing in the January 6th case, Exhibit 247C. The reporter is skeptical. Court filings drop constantly. Most are procedural nonsense. Motions about motions. Legal jargon, that means nothing. But something about the tip feels urgent. So she pulls up the court's electronic filing system, downloads the 8-9-page document, starts reading. Page 34, she sees it. A screenshot of text messages between Mark Meadows and an unnamed senior advisor. The timestamp shows January 5th, 2021, the day before. The messages are discussing crowd size. That's normal. Campaigns always care about crowd size. But then the conversation shifts. One advisor warns that intelligence reports show coordinated groups planning to breach the Capitol, not protest at the Capitol. Breach it. The advisor uses that specific word, breach. Mark Meadows' response. The reporter stares at the screen, reading the words 3 times to make sure she's not misunderstanding. He's been told. He doesn't want to cancel. That's it. 5 words that prosecutors have been searching for since the investigation began. Proof that Trump was warned. Proof that he knew. Proof that he chose to proceed anyway. The reporter immediately calls her editor. By 6 a.m., they're deciding whether to publish. By 8 a.m., the story is live. By 9 a.m., CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News are all covering it. By 10 a.m., Trump's lawyers are filing emergency motions to seal the evidence. Too late. The internet never forgets, and the screenshots are already everywhere. But here's what nobody expected. The messages didn't stop at January 5th. There were more messages from January 6th itself. Messages sent while the riot was happening. Messages that show Trump's team knew the Capitol had been breached and debated for 187 minutes about whether to tell him to call it off. 187 minutes. That's 3 hours and 7 minutes. That's how long Trump waited between the Capitol breach and his video telling people to go home. Prosecutors have been saying for years that the delay was intentional. Trump's defense has been saying he was receiving conflicting information, that he acted as soon as he understood the severity. These messages destroy that defense. They show advisors begging Meadows to get Trump to make a statement. They show Meadows saying Trump is watching TV coverage and refusing to act. They show in real time a president watching his supporters attack the Capitol and choosing to wait. One message sent at 2:43 p.m. on January 6th stops everyone who reads it cold. It's from a senior advisor whose name is redacted in the court filing. He's watching them chant, "Hang Mike Pence," and he's loving it. We're begging him to do something. He's laughing. The room didn't gasp when this broke. Legal experts who've been following this case knew something like this had to exist. But what nobody expected was the documentation to be this explicit, this undeniable, this impossible to spin. And then prosecutors made their move within hours of the filing becoming public. The special counsel's office released a statement. This evidence was obtained through lawful subpoena and represents a small fraction of the communications they've reviewed. The American people deserve to know what their president knew and when he knew it. But here's what changes everything about this story. These aren't allegations anymore. This isn't testimony that can be challenged or witnesses whose credibility can be attacked. These are contemporaneous communications created in real time with no knowledge they'd ever be evidence. This is as close to unimpeachable proof as prosecutors ever get. And Trump's team knows it. The emergency motion to seal the evidence was desperate. It argued that the messages were privileged communications, that their release prejudices Trump's right to a fair trial, that the timing seems calculated to damage his campaign. All of that might be true. None of it changes what the messages say, but not everyone sees it the same way. Trump's defenders are already pushing back. And honestly, when you hear their argument, you might understand why millions of people still believe this is a setup. Here's their case. The messages are being interpreted in the worst possible light. When Meadows said he doesn't want to cancel, that could mean Trump wanted the rally to proceed, not that he wanted violence. When advisors said Trump was watching coverage, that doesn't mean he understood the full severity immediately. And the message about Trump loving it when people chanted about Pence, that's from one person, one perspective, potentially taken out of context. One Trump supporter put it this way on social media within hours of the story breaking. You're telling me Trump's own advisors were texting about him committing crimes in real time and nobody did anything? Nobody called the FBI. Nobody went to Congress. This is either fake or those advisors are complicit. Either way, it's not evidence of Trump's guilt. They're not wrong about one thing. If Trump's closest advisors genuinely believed he was committing crimes on January 6th, their legal and moral obligation was to stop him immediately. The fact that they sent text messages to each other but apparently didn't take more aggressive action raises questions. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The timing does look suspicious. These messages have been in prosecutors' possession for months, according to legal experts who've tracked the discovery timeline. So why surface them now? Why file them in a document that would become public right as Trump is dominating the Republican primary? Trump's lawyers are already crying political prosecution. This is election interference disguised as legal process. One statement reads, "The weaponization of justice to destroy President Trump's campaign." Critics point out that Jack Smith, the special counsel, has a reputation for aggressive tactics, that in previous cases he's been accused of overreach, sometimes allowing political considerations to influence prosecutorial decisions. So who's right? Are these messages the smoking gun that finally proves Trump's guilt? Or are they being weaponized by prosecutors who couldn't win their case on the merits and are now trying it in the court of public opinion? That's the question tearing the country apart right now. And the more you look at the evidence, the messier it gets. Because there's another side to this story that most coverage is completely ignoring. But this didn't come out of nowhere. Years before this bombshell, the pieces were falling into place. Back in January 2023, the House Select Committee investigating January 6th wrapped up its work. They'd interviewed over 1,000 witnesses. They'd reviewed hundreds of thousands of documents. They'd held televised hearings that millions watched. And then they referred criminal charges to the Department of Justice. But here's what most people missed. The committee knew they had gaps. They knew Trump's closest advisors, the people in the room with him that day, had largely refused to testify. Mark Meadows invoked executive privilege. Other senior officials took the Fifth Amendment. The committee could establish a timeline of events, but they couldn't prove what Trump knew minute by minute. That's what special counsel Jack Smith has been working on for the past 2 years. Smith is not relitigating what the committee found. He's filling in the gaps, getting the evidence that witnesses wouldn't provide voluntarily through subpoenas, through pressure, through the grinding machinery of federal criminal investigation. Trump has called this a witch hunt from day one. But here's the thing about federal investigations. They're slow. They're methodical. They don't leak. When indictments finally drop, when evidence finally surfaces, it's because prosecutors have built cases they believe are airtight. Michael Cohen, Trump's former lawyer, predicted this moment years ago. They have everything, he said in an interview last year. Trump thinks loyalty protects him, but when people face prison time, loyalty evaporates. Someone in that inner circle will talk, and when they do, it's over. Was Cohen right? These messages suggest he might have been, because for messages this specific to be in prosecutors' hands, someone with access gave them up. Whether through subpoena or cooperation deal, someone who was there, someone who saw everything, provided the receipts. Trump's legal team has been operating under the assumption that without cooperating witnesses from the inner circle, the case would remain circumstantial. Sure, Trump's actions that day look suspicious. Sure, the timeline is damning. But without direct evidence of his intent, without proof that he knew violence was planned and chose to let it happen, conviction would be difficult. These messages change that calculation entirely. They're not circumstantial. They're not open to interpretation. They're Trump's own advisors, in real time, documenting exactly what he knew and how he responded. Former federal prosecutors who've reviewed the messages are calling them devastating. This is the kind of evidence that wins cases, one explained. Juries don't trust witnesses. Witnesses have agendas, can be confused, might lie. But contemporaneous communications, text messages sent with no idea they'd ever be public, that's as good as evidence gets. The stage was set years ago when Trump decided to surround himself with people willing to document everything. The trap was built over months as prosecutors pieced together communication records. And Trump walked right into it by consistently claiming he had no advance knowledge of violence, that he acted appropriately when informed of the breach, that his delay in responding was justified. Every one of those claims is contradicted by these messages. And that's exactly what should terrify anyone who thought Trump could fight this indefinitely. Because what prosecutors did next shows exactly how serious they are. Within 48 hours of the messages going public, the special counsel's office made another move that sent shockwaves through Trump's legal team. They filed a superseding indictment, not replacing the existing charges, adding to them. The new charges include conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, a more serious version of charges Trump was already facing. But the language in the indictment is different now. It cites the newly revealed messages as evidence of foreknowledge and intent. People who do this for a living are calling it a masterstroke of prosecutorial strategy. What does this mean for the coming months? Right now, Trump's legal team is scrambling, but the cracks go far deeper than motions and appeals. The messages have already changed the narrative. No longer is this just a political argument or a he said, she said between the White House and investigators. These are real-time communications from Trump's own advisors documenting exactly what he knew and when he knew it. And that changes everything. The defense is trying to argue context, ambiguity, selective interpretation, but the plain reading of these messages leaves very little room for doubt. The walls are closing in, and Trump knows it. His base is still loyal, but even among his closest allies, whispers of concern are spreading. They see the stakes, they see the exposure, and they know that any misstep could be catastrophic. The political implications are equally staggering. Trump is running for president while facing multiple criminal cases. Every legal setback becomes campaign fodder. Every piece of damning evidence is spun as proof of persecution. His rallies double as trial defenses, his speeches blending campaign promises with commentary on his legal woes. Fundraising surges each time a new headline breaks. In this sense, the legal and political battles are inseparable. The more prosecutors tighten their grip, the more Trump portrays himself as the victim of a system conspiring against him, and the more his supporters dig in. But the evidence isn't going away. The messages, the text threads, the timestamps, they're out in the public domain. They exist, whether Trump spins the story or not. And there's more. Legal experts are warning that the January 6th case is just the beginning. The pattern established by these messages is likely to ripple across every legal challenge Trump faces. Georgia, classified documents, civil investigations. The narrative of I didn't know or I reacted appropriately now collides head-on with documented evidence. Even if he wins procedural battles, motions to suppress, appeals, or venue changes, the messages have already contaminated public perception and jury pools. The prosecution doesn't have to win every motion. The damage has been done. The evidence has been seeded into public memory, making it impossible to return to the old narrative. In the coming months, expect the battle to escalate. The trial date looms. Jury selection will be grueling. Finding impartial jurors in Washington, D.C. for a case this politically charged may be impossible. Appeals will begin before the trial even starts. Trump will continue campaigning, filing motions, and attacking the special counsel publicly, all while managing multiple legal fronts. His base remains energized, but internal morale inside his legal team is reportedly shaky. These messages hit differently than prior evidence. They're harder to spin, harder to explain away, and harder to reconcile with the claims of innocence. Even loyal allies privately question whether the defense can survive. Meanwhile, prosecutors are methodically preparing the superseding indictment, the newly revealed communications, and additional evidence still under seal indicate that Jack Smith is building a multi-layered strategy. This isn't a single case attack. It's a comprehensive effort to prove a pattern of behavior across multiple incidents. Each piece of evidence strengthens the next. Each communication reveals intent and foreknowledge. And according to insiders, more evidence will surface in the coming weeks. This is a legal operation with precision, timing, and strategy that even Trump's experienced legal team finds difficult to counter. Trump's reaction has been predictable but intense. On social media, he lashes out, attacking the special counsel, the judge, the system itself. He calls the evidence fake, orchestrated, politically motivated. His supporters amplify every word. Threats are reported against the courthouse. Security is heightened. And yet, for all the fury and performance, the messages remain unimpeachable, unchanged, and undeniable. They are proof that exists independently of rhetoric, and that is what makes them so devastating. The nation, as a whole, is caught in the crossfire. Half the country sees justice being served. Half sees political persecution. The institutions of government are being tested. The courts, the Department of Justice, the electoral system, the media, they are all being measured against unprecedented pressure. And all of it is happening while a former president campaigns for re-election, controlling the narrative in real time, challenging the legitimacy of the system even as it prosecutes him. The stakes couldn't be higher. The outcome of this trial and the cases that follow will define American politics for decades. The countdown is real. Evidence is moving. Witnesses will be called. Messages, like the ones released this week, will form the backbone of the case. Trump's legal team is under pressure, trying to react, trying to anticipate, trying to survive a scenario that grows more perilous with every day. But the truth is, some of the most critical decisions have already been made. By those who documented their knowledge at the moment, by those who shared evidence with prosecutors, and by the prosecutors themselves, who waited until the moment was legally and strategically optimal to strike. When the trial finally begins, it will be a collision of law, politics, and public perception unlike anything modern America has ever seen. Every motion, every objection, every piece of evidence will carry extraordinary weight. The jurors, the lawyers, the judges, they will all be operating under unprecedented scrutiny. And the public, already polarized, will watch, analyze, and debate. The consequences are not hypothetical. They are imminent. Every decision made in the courtroom will ripple through the political system, potentially reshaping the Republican Party, the presidency, and American democracy itself. Trump is fighting back, yes, but the momentum is with the prosecution. The messages released this week are not just a snapshot. They are a pattern, a narrative of intent, a record of decisions that can no longer be ignored. And yet, Trump doubles down, performing confidence, projecting strength, energizing his base, and attacking anyone who questions him. This dual reality, a legal siege on one hand and political rallying on the other, defines the moment. The country has never faced a situation quite like this. The rules, norms, and expectations of governance, of accountability, of justice are all being tested simultaneously. So, where does that leave us? In a place where history, law, and politics intersect in real time. A former president on trial for actions taken while in office. Evidence that cannot be ignored. A base that refuses to accept outcomes contrary to their beliefs. And a legal system attempting to function under unprecedented pressure. The outcome is uncertain, but one thing is clear. When the verdict comes, America will never be the same. Half will see justice. Half will see persecution. Institutions will be tested, precedents set, and the consequences felt for generations. The messages that dropped this week were just the opening salvo. The trial approaches, additional evidence awaits, witnesses will testify. And Trump, for all his confidence, cannot change the record already established. The countdown continues. The reckoning is real. And when that jury finally deliberates, when the verdict is read, the weight of history will fall on the American people, the legal system, and the presidency itself. This is more than a trial. This is the story of accountability, of power, and of democracy under pressure. The evidence is clear, the stakes are high, and the outcome will define an era. The stage is set. The trial will begin. The world is watching. And the question remains, will justice prevail? Or will politics, power, and loyalty reshape the rules entirely? In the coming weeks, every American will bear witness to the answer. And when it arrives, it will be more consequential than anyone has yet imagined. The final act is coming, and nothing will ever be the same.